Hello everyone, Someone Bard here, and welcome to a special Thanksgiving review. Yep, it's time to go over some more Thanksgiving specials and movies. And there's no better time to do so than by reviewing the critically panned yet adequate box office hit from the two men who co-directed Dr. Seuss animated films. And this one Thanksgiving movie is a contender for being one of the worst holiday flicks that I have seen. Freebirds. Our turkey, named Reggie, has lived on a farm of other turkeys who are dumb, and Reggie becomes an outcast. But Reggie's selected as the pardoned turkey for Thanksgiving and becomes the president's pet turkey. And while Reggie's happy with his new life, involving ordering and eating pizza and watching a Spanish soap opera, another turkey named Jake comes to take Reggie away to save turkeys, as he believes the great turkey has chosen him to save his kind from being eaten. And the way to do so is by going back in time to the first Thanksgiving to save every single turkey before the big feast. So by going aboard a time machine called Steve, an acronym for Space Time Exploration Vehicle Envoy, Reggie and Jake time travel to 3 days before the first Thanksgiving and meet the turkeys there, who are all surviving on their own and living underground from the pilgrims, as well as defending their eggs and kids. But Jake tries to convince the turkeys to fight back, while Reggie tries to get acquainted with a female turkey named Jenny, who is the daughter of Broadbeak, the chief turkey, and is the sister to Ranger, the lead turkey warrior. All the while, the pilgrims are starving, even to blaming Governor William Bradford for eating their food, and Captain Miles Standish does whatever it takes to get turkeys for the pilgrims to eat. As far as Thanksgiving shows go, this one's pretty nonsensical in its humor, story, and retelling of history. For starters, the plot is pretty weak. The idea of going back to the first Thanksgiving isn't a bad idea, but the way it's portrayed is worse than an episode of Mr. Peabody and Sherman, because even though those do a retelling of history, they are at least funny and enjoyable, and there's no sense that whatever the duo did changed the future, except making a bad pun in relation to the historical figure they helped. But here, it makes the pilgrims look like the bad guys, and the turkeys the good guys, and the natives are a side note. In fact, Miles Standish is the villain of the film. And no, this isn't like that Animaniacs episode where he tries to hunt down a single turkey the Warners have as a pet. He tries to hunt down every turkey in this one. And not that I care if I give it away or anything, but he doesn't join in the feast, pretty much going against what originally happened. And speaking of the feast, the ending of the film came across as almost making the movie a so bad it's good one. And I'll try to keep it simple at best, and I wouldn't care if I spoiled it for those who haven't seen it. Reggie returns to the present feeling that he ruined the turkey's life, when really Jake's the one who accidentally gave away the turkey's hiding place. Anyway, Reggie finds future versions of himself, don't ask how this is possible, who tell him that Jake and the turkeys will lose, and so Reggie first visits Jake in the past and announces himself as the Great Turkey, don't ask, to tell Jake to save the turkeys. Then Reggie returns to 1621, where Standish gets taken away through the portal, and Reggie lands back with pizza to solve the pilgrims' hunger problem. And the Pilgrims and Native Americans eat pizza as their first Thanksgiving meal, with Chief Massasoit acting like a modern-day middle-aged man, and Steve is also joining in the feast as well. And so every Thanksgiving, pizza's being served instead of turkeys. Jesus' interpretation of the first Thanksgiving is worse than Hanna-Barbera's The Thanksgiving That Almost Wasn't. I mean, as backwards as that one was, it was at least entertainingly bad at how annoying it felt, and there was no time machine or pizza being served. Yet I almost giggled at how absurd this ending came out, but I didn't enjoy the rest of the film, so I don't know what to say anymore. Oh, and did I mention some of the product placements? Like, where would there be an Auntie M's in a secret underground facility? And did you see that some of the pieces are from Chuck E. Cheese's? They are noticeable at least, but they're kind of distracting, and they're only food products. Like, would you prefer having these during Thanksgiving? And the jokes the film provides have odd setups and weak deliveries. Like at one point, Jake tells Reggie the main plot of the film, and turns to the audience to clarify the plot. But it turns out he was talking to his reflection. And the humor like that is just bothersome. And with some of the characters, there's quite a bit to talk about. Reggie didn't do much for me anyway. I mean, getting the actor who voiced Lightning McQueen isn't going to sway me, and I don't get into his state the obvious brand of humor. Jake goes back and forth between being serious and joking, and there's nothing really to define what his deal is as a character, aside from messing up the future of his kind and as the president of the Turkey Freedom Front. Which is never mentioned again and is obviously something he made up. With Jenny, aside from being the chieftain's daughter, has a little bit to her, with her one eye going lazy whenever she's in shock, has been chosen to lead the turkeys, and being voiced by the actress who voiced two great characters before and after this one is a plus. But then, she and the other turkeys do kind of represent the Native Americans, by the way they use feathers, shells, and other material as part of their culture or use as decoration, and that the actual Native Americans don't appear until the end. Like, why were the turkeys having some Native American bits to them, and why couldn't they be friends with the natives? Again, it would be like a full-length version of that Animaniacs episode, but at the very least it would have been something, even if it still retells the Thanksgiving history. And with Steve being voiced by Sulu and saying his 1-2-word catchphrase at the end, which felt pretty forced, is very much a rip-off of the spaceship from Flight of the Navigator. He of course not only time travels, but he also has floating steps, he can turn invisible, and he even stops dead in space above Earth. He's clearly a take on that ship, and the only things that are missing are the various alien creatures and having a robotic eye. Also, the president has a Bill Clinton-like voice, which is okay, and the president's daughter, despite having an almost creepy-looking face, has a couple of decent lines here and there. And the actors providing the voices for the characters don't help much for what they got. Owen Wilson voices Reggie, Woody Harrelson voices Jake, Amy Poehler voices Jenny, George Takei voices Steve, Carl Meany voices Captain Miles Standish, Keith David voices Chief Broadbeak, Dan Vogler voices Governor William Bradford, Jimmy Hayward voices Ranger, Leatherbeak, and the President, Caitlin Mayer voices the President's daughter, Carlos Alazaqui voices Amos, Robert Beltran voices Chief Massasoit, Scott Moiser voices Pizza Dude, Carlos Pons voices TV narrator and Alejandro, and Lauren Bowers voices Jake's mother. As a whole, this movie is pretty stupid. The characters aren't interesting, the story is ridiculous, and while the animation is okay, it's not enough to save the film. Director Jimmy Hayward did a Thanksgiving film that's really silly, with humor that isn't funny and just confusing, ideas that are ludicrous, dialogue that's somewhat forced and cliched in some moments, and it all being not enjoyable, fun, and sometimes not making any sense. Though while a couple of jokes gave me a smile or a small chuckle, there's nothing else too engaging or funny about it. At times it could be a so bad it's good movie, mostly in terms of its ending, but it's mainly a mindless and harmless flick that isn't right on many levels, especially for being a holiday film. And even with that said, I say this is a worse Thanksgiving show than the Thanksgiving that almost wasn't. So today, this movie became a rating of 2 stars. So thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Facebook or Twitter, support me on Patreon, tune in next time for a new video, and have a happy Thanksgiving.